Christmas trees. Keeping me company. A lot of conditioning this morning. And this often happens when the body is feeling a lot of symptoms and old patterns of resisting them. And I wouldn't even frame that in a personality way, which is the body. The body resists pain. But then old patterns of personality, thoughts, separating thoughts, layer on top of that pain. Having a disability and having a child is I haven't seen it talked about. My grandmother had polio and she had 6 kids. She had 7 and lost 1 in infancy and raised 6. Her body had so many limitations and so much power, as any body does, as my body does. And there used to be a wondering and a wishing that she was here so that I could talk to her about how did she get through it. How did she manage? She was very Catholic, very adored, idolized by her family and the community. I idolized her. I never registered the fact as a kid that she was in a wheelchair. It didn't. She was just my grandma. I don't know that idealizing people is helpful. I mean, it is what it is, but it's just an idea of that person's experience. I know there was a lot more to her experience than her courage and her and her beauty, which are undeniable. But what since my diagnosis, and often early on after my son and in pregnancy, wished I could have had her to talk to. How do you navigate the trauma of disability when it comes up in motherhood? When you all get sick and you have to rearrange your lives, and your son is sick and your body is needed beyond the regular capacity as a mother, which is already huge. And your body needs help healing. I know how I handle it, and I'm handling it, and it's with great help. How my disability extends into my husband. It's not just mine, it's ours. And how much it impacts every aspect of his life that no one sees, and they couldn't possibly. There was a phase of trying to create visibility for him, for us, and people don't see what they can't see, even when it's explained to them. Really often we can only see what we're living through and in. And so that felt like a lot of energy that just went nowhere. And now it feels just, the aliveness is just like, this is our life. Life isn't fair. And there's no need to create visibility unless life is creating it. And I don't know if that's what's happening here with these videos, but what was I saying? Here, disability is managed with help, with support, and part of the awakening and dying continues to be a dying of this ideal mother. The MS is just driving that into the ground. And the conditioning would ask, like, why me? Why can't I be a good mom? Why can't I give more? I feel like there's no space for me. And you can see that these feelings are really felt still. In the body, like in the core of it, before the beliefs come in here. I don't know other people's experience, but it's just the body's so tired. The back is gone out. There's clumsiness, there's symptoms. And pain, and on top of all that, like coughing all night with this virus, and my son being a toddler, a lot of screaming, and beautiful, healthy baby boy doing just what he needs to, and the nervous system has a strong reaction to scream. The body just wanting space, wanting rest, as anybody does when it's done too much, when it's given more energy than it has to give. So I imagine having a conversation with my grandmother about these moments. As I've often found Catholicism laden with guilt. And there are beautiful parts of it. And I'm not anti-Catholicism. I don't practice. But the Catholicism I was exposed to, the beliefs that are inherited are laden with guilt. I'm doing something wrong. I'm apologizing. I'm inherently indebted. And that burden, if that's what my grandmother was carrying, which I imagine it is because it's here in the conditioning very strongly. I want to be a better mom. I want to be a better wife. I want to be a better daughter, better friend, which all means taking up no space and cleaning up and peacemaking, because there's an inherent wound around apologizing for being here. For just being here. I don't belong to myself. I belong to everyone else. I'm not okay unless they're okay. Disability it severs that. And I use that language, like I can't think of words right now, but there's a wanting for language that is almost violent, because that's the experience of like the MS cut through that. It just destroyed that, because I can't be that good girl. I can't. When the body is disabled and limited and unable, it falls apart. And at that point, it's not Chelsea crying out in pain. It's the primal being in this form of just raw fighting for life, feeling dying happening, existential experience. And then the death of her, the good one, it's just not even relevant anymore. And it's not relevant anymore. And it's interesting that when these moments up all night coughing, back out this morning, sensory motor limitations, my foot's dropped, my son screaming. There's shadows of those old beliefs that layer on top of the emotional and felt experience of the body in pain. But really the body is just in pain. It's being, and maybe there's some sort of like spiritual karma, if you want to call it that brings MS into someone's life, or illness because of a belief structure that needs to be destroyed. I don't know. But here it is. It's here. MS is here. It's not going anywhere. And if it does, then it does, but it's already done its work. It's already destroyed me. And I'm grateful for that. I really am. There was a thought in some recent videos of like, is this really my life? This kind of like wisping or identifying thought of me and my life. And all these videos about this girl, this woman, and MS and disability. And this like little voice of like, is that really me? Does this always happen? Aren't you making this up? Aren't you dramatizing this? Doesn't this seem depressing for people to hear? Even if no one watches them, doesn't this feel depressing for you to hear? It sure is depressing for me. That's the voice. It's so amazing how the separate self slips in and is so used to slipping in. After 12 years, I don't know how long I've had MS. After over a decade of being disabled in this way, and I don't know what it's like for people who are born with disability versus like transformation of functioning in mid-adulthood. But this slippery little identity always finding a should to come back to when like it can't possibly trust that this aliveness is just expressing, and disability is part of the expression. And it can't really let that in because the disability is what breaks that identity apart and shatters it and destroys it and kills it, and there's death. But that doesn't mean that it can't still pop back and sometimes seem convincing. When there's no agenda, life is just happening. But the separate self doesn't like that. And it will always squeak one in. And it's not an it. It's a process. It's life.